Hello, my friends. This is Baal Kadmon, and I would like to thank you for watching and or listening to this podcast. Today I'm going to get personal with you again. I hope some of you will be able to relate to what I have to say tonight. I know many of us feel that we don't fit in. For some, this has actually been a liberation, but I'm willing to wager that for most of us, including myself, this has caused some type of pain or hardship in our lives. There's something especially painful when you are being yourself and you get rejected by your classmates or your peers and even members of your own family. It can be a bitter and painful experience. When I was younger, I wasn't like my classmates. I didn't like sports. I didn't like cars, although I did have a very impressive Hot Wheels collection. But I wasn't all that social. I loved my alone time. I would be in my own world. Unfortunately, that was frowned upon. I simply didn't fit in. And not to date myself, but I didn't even fit in to the groups that were considered nerds or dweebs. I was just me, I didn't feel superior to anyone. I just wanted to be left alone, pretty much. I hated school with a passion. It bored me to tears. My father thought that maybe I would fare better in a religious Jewish school. I don't know why he would think that, despite the fact that we were not religious at all. In fact, we were as religious as the late Christopher Hitchens. Okay, maybe not that extreme. So he sent me off to one of these schools, and it was about the third grade year. And as I knew was going to happen, I didn't last long. I was expelled for not being, quote-unquote, religious enough. I recall during one of my last days there, an irritable rabbi dressed me down in front of dozens of students because I was not, quote-unquote, Jewish enough. I mean, he really yelled at me. I recall having a deep, fearful tremble within me as he was yelling. It was fucking horrible. I despised him so much. He was lucky I wasn't into the occult then. I don't do much cursing as it is, but I swear I would have pulled out all the stops to get that guy. When I went to a more secular school, there too I found out that I wasn't really fitting in there either. They were saying, oh, you have a learning disability. No, I didn't have a learning disability. I just wasn't interested. So not fitting into school was one thing, but it was much more painful when a parent doesn't really get you either. My father never really understood me. He was a ladies' man and probably one of the most extroverted people I ever knew. He didn't understand why I was simply not more like him. Look, I was a teenager. Listen, I had crushes on all the girls in my classes, pretty much. But I simply didn't have, I guess you could say, the womanizing gene like my father had. I just wanted to be left alone to my own devices. I wasn't hurting anyone. So my father had enough of my introverted ways, and he shipped me off to Israel for a few years to get my shit together. Maybe it would make me, quote-unquote, normal. Little did he know, it was a trip that opened up my world to the occult. When I came back from Israel, I was actually more in my own world than I was before. In time, I was starting to study things like the Kabbalah, and I asked my father to find me a teacher that would teach me the Kabbalah, or at least the Torah in a sort of a more systematic way. Well, he did, but the teacher that he picked out was sort of like this typical stodgy Orthodox rabbi. Poor guy. He had no idea what he was in for. When he discovered that the Kabbalistic works that I was doing, he nearly lost his mind. When he heard that I was doing all these meditations, like very obscure ones that probably he probably heard about, but he's probably never done himself, he was shocked and angered, and he stormed out and he told my father, I'm never going to teach your son again. I guess maybe I was a bit more advanced than he was, but of course that wasn't what I was thinking in retrospect. What I was feeling at the time was utter rejection and shame. Again, I was being rejected for who I was. My father eventually pretty much gave up on me on that aspect, and from time to time he would say things like, my son is a lemon or a loser. You will end up being a cab driver, he would say things like that, which in his mind was not a good profession to be in. He didn't say these things very often, but he did, and I recall feeling deeply hurt by this because I knew what he meant by it. Fast forward a few years, as high school was coming to a close, I decided I would go into medicine, but not to be a doctor, but to do sort of research in a lab. That more, sort of suits my temperament more. At this time, my father was dying of AIDS and was pretty much near the end. When I found out that I got accepted into a pre-med program, instead of congratulating me, he said, "You don't have what it takes." I was so incensed that I told him in anger, "Well, you won't live to the end of the summer." Well, suffice it to say, we were both right. I never did go through the med school program, and he did die that summer. Actually, right before it. So you can only imagine the guilt that I felt. As I entered early adulthood, I started to date more. Well, I ended up actually dating a lot, trying to fit in, trying to find someone who would sort of accept me for who I was. I met some wonderful women. Some were as weird as I was. But I had one thing holding me back, and that was low self-esteem, because I just wasn't comfortable with who I was. I used to brush it off, but it affected me, and I just felt like the odd one out, no matter where I went, and I was not okay with that. And you can't really focus in a relationship or on someone else when you feel that way about yourself. This oddball feeling went into my professional life as well. It was very stark when I worked on Wall Street. And I have to admit, I love Wall Street. I'll be honest. I love the action and the mental challenge behind it. But I was not able to fit into that crowd, even if I could run circles around those people regarding the work we were doing. I recall once I was in the elevator of the Bank of America building here in Manhattan, and the elevator got stuck. Everyone was talking about the Super Bowl, and they were asking each other what plays or players they liked, whatever. I was praying to the God above and the devil below. I was like, please don't have him turn to me and ask. Please don't. I'll fucking sacrifice a goat to you. Please, I'll do anything. Then he turns to me and asks me about the game. And as he asks, the elevator jerks up and he loses focus. And I was like, oh my God, thank you, baby Jesus, and horned and cloven-hooved Satan for coming to my rescue. As this feeling of being out of place increased, I found myself having to drink before every date and before every social outing. I felt without drinking, I would be boring. It got to the point that it became a crutch. I would literally schedule my dates around when I would drink. It was crazy. And the weird thing is, I knew I had the magical ability to remedy these situations, but I never used it. Despite being successful in all other areas at the time, I don't know why I didn't do it. Maybe there was a part of me that needed this disabling mindset. I don't know. So, one day, I was in my living room, and I had some candles and incense lit, and I simply honored the spirits that I was working with. Then it dawned on me. I started going through the list of things that I was thankful for, and it dawned on me, I was like, I'm into really interesting topics. I get to do what I love. I was like, fuck, I'm awesome. And I didn't mean that in an egotistical way, but in a self-love realization way. Like a switch went off. But in reality, it was no switch. I was passively taking inventory of who I was as a person and realized I'm never going to fit in, and it's perfectly okay. I was given a gift, and it was time for me to express it and be okay with it. It is truly a mindset change. Maintaining this new mindset is tough. And I know so many of you, based on the emails that I receive, are struggling with this too. In the end, we can blame society. We can blame our parents. I blamed my father for the longest time until I stepped back and I realized where he was coming from. He was abandoned by his parents at a young age. He was eventually reunited with his mother, but it already warped him. Because of his own insecurity and feelings of lack, he became a person that was always a people pleaser because he had to be for his own edification. He had to be loved all the time. If you are listening to this now and feel left out or alone, just know that you aren't alone. Trust me, there are many of us out there. It's okay to be who you are. Fly your freak flag if that's what you want to do, and just be yourself. The occult world is great for us who don't fit in to like the norm. But we need to use it for our betterment and not to escape from our lives. Escapism is fine in small doses, but when you lose yourself because you are in pain, the thing is, you lose yourself. Do you see what I mean? You may have issues that you need to resolve, maybe substance issues or emotional issues or other. Once you make a commitment to clean your mind and accept who you are, no one can take that away from you. Society may not accept you any more than before, but I assure you, you will be happier. And the beauty of it is now it will be easier for you to find people who are into what you're into. And I mean that in all senses of the word. I see groups and posts by occultists sometimes just having fun, posting funny shit. I do it too. Did you see that ridiculous holiday image I sent on Facebook and Instagram? I sent it, by the way, with a good deal of uncertainty. I lamented to a friend about it, and then I realized where that was coming from, and I decided to just let it be. It was fun. I didn't fully let the insecurity dictate my actions, and I'm glad I didn't do it. I'm glad I didn't take that image down, but man, I was close. And I was close because my insecurity popped up and said, oh my God, people are going to look at that. They're going to think it's foolish. And da-da-da. But you know what? Fuck it. So what? It was funny. So what? So what I'm trying to say is embrace your differences despite what people think. And you know what? To be honest, most people have their heads up their own asses. They aren't even thinking about anyone else anyway. This was a lesson that took me a long time to learn, and I'm still learning it. I am by no means the poster child for just be you. But I'm a hell of a lot better than I used to be. And you know what? Better is good. Even these more personal podcasts are part of my evolution in this way. Do you see? It's in the journey that we learn. The end goal is just the icing on the cake. The world needs you to be you. Once you can be okay with being who you are, with all the quirks and the things that people find odd, the happier your journey on this fucking spinning rock is going to be. I know you got this. And that's all I have for you tonight. I'll speak to you soon. So mote it be.